For years, whenever you heard the word blockchain, you probably thought of Bitcoin and all that crypto speculation. But what's the real status of the technology today, beyond all the headlines?
So, in this explainer, we're going to dig into a really crucial question. Where is this technology actually delivering real value in 2026? The answer, well, it might not be what you expect.
Because the real story of blockchain isn't happening out in the open on public exchanges or in flashy news articles. It's actually a quiet revolution happening in the background, deep inside the infrastructure of our economy. And this really gets to the heart of it. The most successful applications aren't built for hype, they're built for pure utility. Think of it like the plumbing in your house. It's absolutely essential, but you never see it. And because it's out of sight, its true scale is just constantly overlooked. Okay, so let's start with the biggest and probably most underestimated use case out there, the actual backbone of modern finance. And no, we're not talking about trading tokens here. We're talking about moving real money. Get this, $4 trillion. That's the amount of value that stablecoins processed in just the first half of 2025 alone. I mean, that's not speculation. That is pure, unadulterated payment utility, and it's happening at a massive global scale. So what's the big deal? Well, it means we can finally forget about waiting days for a wire transfer to clear. This is 24/7 settlement, across borders, in a matter of seconds. It's a fundamental upgrade to the speed of global commerce, and it's happening right now, on-chain. All right, the second big, quiet success story is something called real-world asset tokenization, or RWAs. And the idea is actually pretty straightforward. You take a traditional financial asset, think a bond or a piece of real estate, and you create a digital version of it that can live and be traded on a blockchain. And trust me, this is not some niche little experiment. We're talking about a $33 billion market, and it is growing incredibly fast. And why? Because it takes these traditionally illiquid assets, things like private credit or real estate, and it makes them divisible, easily tradable, and suddenly accessible to a much, much wider pool of investors. And just look at who's jumping in. This isn't a list of some scrappy startups. This is a who's who of global finance. You've got BlackRock tokenizing money market funds, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, UBS. They're all building out entire digital asset platforms. When these titans start moving, you know it's a real structural shift. Okay, so let's switch gears. Let's see how these same principles play out in a totally different industry. Supply chain management gives us this perfect case study for understanding what makes a blockchain project work and what makes it fail, sometimes spectacularly. On one hand, you've got Walmart's Food Trust, a huge success. On the other, TradeLens, this massive joint venture by IBM and Maersk that completely shut down. And the difference couldn't be more stark. Walmart focused on solving a very specific, high-pain problem inside its own ecosystem. TradeLens, well, it tried to solve everyone's problems all at once. This quote from the Walmart exec who ran the project really nails it. They didn't start with a technology looking for a problem. No, they had a real business problem, food traceability, and then they had this aha moment where they realized a shared, unchangeable ledger was the perfect tool for the job. And the results were just insane. Before blockchain, if they needed to trace a package of mangoes back to the original farm, it took them 7 days. After they implemented their solution on Hyperledger Fabric, 2.2 seconds. I mean, that's not just an improvement, that is a total game changer. And the key here, this is really important, is that they used a controlled, permissioned network. That just means only approved participants could join. So everyone involved, from the farmers to the processors to the distributors, had a crystal clear incentive to participate, mainly because Walmart, their biggest customer, required it. This created that single shared source of truth for their entire ecosystem. Okay, now let's look at the other side of the coin with TradeLens. They had this grand vision for global shipping, right? But as this expert points out, they just couldn't convince the key players, who were often direct competitors, to share their most sensitive data on a platform that was co-owned by an industry giant like Maersk. The trust just wasn't there. And that points to the other fatal flaw, governance. Who makes the rules, who owns the data, who gets to profit? If you don't have clear, fair, and flexible answers to those questions from the very beginning, the whole thing just collapses. So, if you boil it all down, the failure of TradeLens came down to a few key things. The governance was a mess, stakeholders weren't on board, and the tech itself was just too complicated to integrate. TradeLens is a powerful lesson that even with huge corporate backing, a blockchain project is doomed if it can't solve these very human, very organizational challenges first. So, if we take what we've learned from both the big wins and the big failures, where else is blockchain making quiet but steady progress? Well, two really promising frontiers are emerging in energy and healthcare. In energy, for example, the tech is opening up totally new models for a decentralized power grid. You can imagine local microgrids where neighbors can automatically trade their surplus solar power with each other, or platforms that tokenize renewable energy projects to open them up for global investment. It's really all about creating more efficient, more resilient, and way more transparent energy markets. And then in healthcare, the big focus is on data integrity and patient control. Blockchain offers a potential way to solve this massive problem of different systems not being able to talk to each other, allowing a patient's records to move securely between hospitals and doctors. This could be huge for ensuring the integrity of clinical trial data and, maybe most importantly, giving patients true ownership and control over their own health information.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. It's time for a clear, no-hype assessment of where blockchain really stands in 2026. What we've seen from all these examples, both the successes and the failures, is that four things are absolutely critical. First, you need a specific business case, not just some cool tech looking for a problem. Second, you need a controlled environment where everyone's interests are aligned. Third, you have to deliver measurable gains in speed, cost, whatever. And finally, you need practical, clear governance right from day one. So at the end of the day, the blockchain revolution didn't quite look like the headlines predicted. It's not some flashy consumer product changing all of our daily lives. Instead, in 2026, blockchain has found its true calling as a powerful, specialized enterprise tool. It's become the invisible engine for processes where a bunch of different people who don't necessarily trust each other need to agree on a shared reality. And in that crucial role, its quiet revolution is really just getting started.